The phone call that shattered the quiet of my retirement came on a mundane Thursday evening. The scent of dish soap hung in the air, and the last of the day's sun warmed the Arizona tile of my Phoenix kitchen. I was loading the dishwasher, a solitary man's rhythm in a house that once echoed with the laughter of my son, Joel, and my late wife, Linda. When the phone rang, I dried my hands on a faded towel, expecting a telemarketer or perhaps one of my old firehouse buddies. Instead, it was Joel, and his voice was a seismic shift in my quiet world. "Dad? You sitting down?" he began, his tone cracking with an emotion I hadn't heard since he was a boy. Pure, unvarnished excitement. "Agnes is pregnant. 6 weeks along. You're going to be a grandfather." The warmth that flooded my chest was a physical, aching thing. A grandfather. The title settled over me, heavy with the weight of legacy and poignant with the absence of Linda, who would have wept with joy. We talked for 20 minutes, and he was that little boy again, showing me a crayon drawing, his voice eager and proud. When I hung up, I stood motionless in the kitchen, my gaze drifting to the gallery of photos on the refrigerator. Joel at 8, missing 2 front teeth. Joel at 18, all lanky limbs and hopeful ambition. And now, Joel at 36, a father-to-be. The silence of the house was no longer empty. It was filled with the phantom sounds of a future I had barely allowed myself to dream of. I called him back within the hour, the impulse too strong to ignore. "Come to dinner Saturday," I said, the words tumbling out. "I'll cook. We'll celebrate properly." Those 2 days of preparation were a sacred ritual. I drove to the specialty grocery store, the one that stocked the expensive olive oil Joel loved, and gathered ingredients for a feast. Roasted chicken with rosemary and garlic, the spicy jalapeno cornbread he'd always begged for as a kid, roasted vegetables, and a decadent chocolate cake from the very bakery Linda had favored. At home, I dusted the dining table I rarely used anymore, its surface a monument to lonely meals. I set it with Linda's good china, the plates with the delicate blue rim that she'd saved for special occasions. I arranged framed photos on the mantel, a chronological parade of Joel's life, a visual promise of a cycle continuing. By 6 o'clock, the house was filled with the aromatic symphony of family and celebration, a scent that had been absent for too long. Their arrival was punctual. Joel's sensible, well-maintained Honda pulled into the driveway, and he emerged, his face alight with a nervous happiness. He hugged me at the door, a hard, meaningful embrace that spoke volumes. "Thanks for this, Dad. It means everything." Agnes followed, a vision of calculated serenity in a flowing, bohemian-style dress that artfully concealed any potential early signs of pregnancy. She offered a cool kiss on my cheek, her perfume. We talked for 20 minutes, and he was that little boy again, showing me a crayon drawing, his voice eager and proud. When I hung up, I stood motionless in the kitchen, my gaze drifting to the gallery of photos on the refrigerator. Joel at 8, missing 2 front teeth. Joel at 18, all lanky limbs and hopeful ambition. And now, Joel at 36, a father-to-be. The silence of the house was no longer empty. It was filled with the phantom sounds of a future I had barely allowed myself to dream of. I called him back within the hour, the impulse too strong to ignore. "Come to dinner Saturday," I said, the words tumbling out. "I'll cook. We'll celebrate properly." Those 2 days of preparation were a sacred ritual. I drove to the specialty grocery store, the one that stocked the expensive olive oil Joel loved, and gathered ingredients for a feast. Roasted chicken with rosemary and garlic, the spicy jalapeno cornbread he'd always begged for as a kid, roasted vegetables, and a decadent chocolate cake from the very bakery Linda had favored. At home, I dusted the dining table I rarely used anymore, its surface a monument to lonely meals. I set it with Linda's good china, the plates with the delicate blue rim that she'd saved for special occasions. I arranged framed photos on the mantel, a chronological parade of Joel's life, a visual promise of a cycle continuing. By 6 o'clock, the house was filled with the aromatic symphony of family and celebration, a scent that had been absent for too long. Their arrival was punctual. Joel's sensible, well-maintained Honda pulled into the driveway, and he emerged, his face alight with a nervous happiness. He hugged me at the door, a hard, meaningful embrace that spoke volumes. "Thanks for this, Dad. It means everything." Agnes followed, a vision of calculated serenity in a flowing, bohemian-style dress that artfully concealed any potential early signs of pregnancy. She offered a cool kiss on my cheek, assertive perfume, a stark contrast to the homely scents of rosemary and baking bread. "Neil, you didn't have to go to all this trouble," she demurred, but her eyes were already scanning, assessing. "Nonsense," I replied, my heart too full to be cautious. My first grandchild deserves a proper celebration. We settled in the living room with glasses of wine for Joel and me, sparkling water for Agnes. She perched on the edge of the sofa, one hand resting theatrically on her flat stomach, a gesture that already felt rehearsed. When I asked how she was feeling, she sighed dramatically. "Oh, tired. Emotional. Everything smells different now." Joel reached over and squeezed her hand, but I noticed the shadows under his eyes, a fatigue that seemed deeper than just new father anxiety. Dinner began as a warm, familial scene. I brought out the golden brown chicken, and Joel praised it lavishly, heaping his plate. Agnes, however, wrinkled her nose as if confronted with something foul. "Neil, this chicken smells so strong. Could you open a window?" she asked, pushing her plate slightly away. A small, quiet alarm pinged in the back of my mind, the firefighter's instinct for something out of place. But I dismissed it, opening the kitchen window to the cool November air. When I returned, the narrative shifted. She had pulled the jalapeno cornbread toward her and was cutting a large, enthusiastic slice. "Oh, I'm craving spicy things constantly," she announced, eating 3 pieces in quick succession before pouring herself a cup of the regular coffee I had brewed. "Decaf?" she asked casually. When I told her it was regular and offered to make decaf, she waved me off. "No, this is fine. My doctor says a little caffeine won't hurt." She drank 2 full cups. The puzzle pieces weren't fitting. The nausea and food aversions she claimed should have made the spicy cornbread and strong coffee repulsive, not desirable. My instincts, honed over 35
Assessing
years,
danger,
were now fully awake. This was my first real glimpse of the smoke, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that where there was smoke, there was fire. The conversation then took its calculated turn toward the future. Agnes pulled out her phone, swiping through images not of sonograms or tiny socks, but of lavish, professionally designed nurseries. Price tags were visible in the screenshots: $200 for a sheet set, $800 for a glider chair. "Isn't it beautiful?" she cooed, her voice laced with avarice. I complimented them carefully, my guard now firmly up. She then swiped to photos of their modest 2-bedroom apartment, zooming in on the small second bedroom that served as Joel's office. "It's barely 900 square feet," she lamented. "Where will the nursery go? Where will you stay when you visit your grandchild?" Joel shifted uncomfortably, a flush creeping up his neck. "Agnes, we talked about this. We can make it work." She ignored him, her gaze fixed on me. "Real grandfathers make sure their grandchildren have proper homes." The phrase landed like a lead weight. I deflected, speaking of time and making any space wonderful, but she was undeterred, swiping now to real estate listings in Scottsdale, sprawling homes with pristine lawns and price tags ranging from $600,000 to $800,000. "Family takes care of family, right?" she said, her tone light, but her eyes were hard, challenging. I felt the trap being laid. The hook was my love for my son and my yearning for this grandchild. She was already starting to reel it in. The shakedown began in earnest the very next morning. A call about $300 special prenatal vitamins our insurance supposedly wouldn't cover. Then $450 for prenatal massages. Then $800 Each
for
request was
professional
punctuated
maternity
with
clothes.
the same manipulative refrain: "Joel is so stressed about money, and Joel doesn't need to know." I felt a profound sickness with each transfer, a violation of the sacred trust this pregnancy was supposed to represent. But the true turning point was her solo visit. She arrived laden with shopping bags from high-end department stores, the tags still visible on her new, non-maternity jacket. She lifted them with ease, no fatigue, no struggle. In my kitchen, she laid out her ultimate plan, swiping through million-dollar villas on her tablet with the practiced ease of a real estate tycoon. When I suggested we slow down and involve Joel, her mask shattered. The warmth vanished from her face, replaced by a cold, predatory sharpness. Premature? Planning for our child is premature? Maybe I misunderstood what kind of grandfather you'd be. She stormed out, but in her dramatic exit, she forgot her tablet. It was a fatal mistake. A quick check of her browser history revealed the terrifying truth. Searches for pregnancy symptoms to fake, saved luxury car listings, vacation packages to Cabo, and a $12,000 diamond bracelet. This wasn't nesting. This was a meticulously planned siege on my finances and my family. The confrontation solidified my resolve. I could no longer afford the luxury of doubt. I hired Marcus Gray, a stoic, efficient private investigator whose work was as clean and precise as a surgical incision. For 1 week, he documented a life utterly incompatible with pregnancy. Photos of Agnes at an upscale gym, effortlessly pressing 180 pounds on the leg press machine, her stomach flat and toned beneath her workout gear. Video of her on a treadmill, running at a brisk 6 miles per hour. A clear video of her at a trendy wine bar, laughing with a friend as she raised a glass of deep red wine to her lips and took a long, appreciative sip. The final, incontrovertible proof came from Marcus's contacts, a complete absence of any OB/GYN appointments or pregnancy-related insurance claims in her name. The baby was a ghost, a fictional character in Agnes's play for wealth. The final, chilling piece of evidence fell into my lap when I went to return her tablet. Sitting in my truck outside their apartment, I saw her on the balcony, phone to her ear, her voice carrying on the still evening air. Following my lawyer's advice, I activated my phone's recorder. Her words, casual and cruel, sealed her fate. Like I'd actually have a baby right now. This body took too much work to ruin with pregnancy, but Neil doesn't need to know that until after we get what we need. I had her, not with suspicions, not with circumstantial evidence, but with her own voice, confessing to the entire, sordid scheme. Thanksgiving Day arrived, clear and warm. I prepared the traditional meal with a focus that was almost militant. The turkey, the stuffing, the pies, it was all a stage set for the final act. In my shirt pocket, the digital recorder felt like a lead weight, its tiny red light a beacon of impending justice. When Joel and Agnes arrived, the performance began anew. Agnes was the picture of maternal bliss, her hand constantly fluttering to her stomach, her voice soft and placid. We navigated the pleasantries, the talk of work and future plans, a family portrait painted on a foundation of lies. The moment of truth arrived when Joel's phone buzzed with a work emergency, forcing him to step onto the patio. As soon as the glass door slid partially shut, Agnes followed me into the kitchen. The transformation was instantaneous. The gentle smile vanished, replaced by a cold, merciless stare. She moved close, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. She began and laid out her ultimatum, $1 million villa, or she would destroy me with a lie so heinous it would forever sever me from my son, a false accusation of sexual assault, claiming the child might be mine. She leaned back, smug in her perceived power, believing she had checkmated an old, sentimental man. The silence that followed her threat was profound. I looked at her, this woman who had woven herself into my family only to try and burn it down for profit, and I felt an immense, clarifying calm. I set down the dish I was holding. "Agnes," I said, my voice steady as stone. "Did you know Arizona is a one-party consent state for recordings?" The confusion on her face was almost comical, quickly morphing into dawning horror as I held up the recorder, its red light glowing like a malevolent eye. I played back her threat, her own voice echoing in the tense kitchen, spelling out her own condemnation. Before she could recover, I presented the dossier, the photos, the videos, the medical verifications. The evidence was irrefutable, a tsunami of truth washing away her elaborate fiction. "There is no baby, Agnes," I stated, my words final. "There never was." The aftermath was a quiet, devastating earthquake. Joel returned, took in the scene, and listened in stunned, heartbroken silence as I played the recording for him. The destruction of his world was visible on his face, the collapse of his marriage, his impending fatherhood, his trust. When he asked her, point-blank, if she was pregnant, and her weak, defeated no finally came, something in him broke and then solidified in the same instant. "We're getting divorced," he said, his voice hollow. He walked out, telling her not to come home. The revenge was not sweet. It was somber and necessary. In the weeks that followed, the consequences rained down on Agnes with the inevitability of gravity. Her attempts to smear us on social media were thwarted by our own attorney withdrew. She lost her job as the story spread through her industry. The divorce was swift and brutal, leaving her with nothing but the debt from her own legal fees. Joel moved in with me temporarily, and we began the slow, painful process of healing, of rebuilding trust not just between us, but in his own judgment. The victory was not in her humiliation, but in our preservation. I had entered the fire not with rage, but with proof, and we had emerged, scarred but intact, a family saved from a con artist who learned too late that a father's love is a force far more powerful than greed.